the final plenary session. These are the last 30 minutes before lunch. And first up, we have a kind of pitching session, let's call it, because it's a panel. We have 5 voices, 20 minutes, and the question, what policy can we apply in the European Union to enhance the cultural and creative industries? So this is very much like a pitching session because I think all of you have approximately 2 minutes, 3 minutes to pitch one thought to policymakers in the European Union. You've all been speaking about this during the day. There's been breakout sessions going into different aspects of the question. And I'm not introducing anyone because I'm not taking any more time from the actual talk. But I will give the voices and let's go chronologically. Tobias.
That was it. I just realized that I shouldn't have chosen this chair, but okay. And I wasn't really aware of the pitch either. But let me pick one of the things that I discussed in my session. Then, so why I'm here is I'm basically a cultural entrepreneur and book publisher, but I got assigned by the government to write a come up with a suggestion for a new national strategy for the cultural creative sectors and industries. And we're presenting that in August last year. And there we sort of discuss various aspects of these sectors. And that is something perhaps that I would pitch that we cannot sort of be limited by one perspective with an artistic perspective or arts and culture policy perspective, but recognizing the fact that through one activity we can achieve several political goals. And meaning, for example, if you're thinking about, I think that in the movie industry you are used to that. You can see that if you go to Cannes, there are some artistic values in that. Also recognizing there are commercial values, and also thinking about sort of that will have some effects on how you present the image of Sweden and so forth, but sort of learning from that, and so just starting to think about that. But and just being a bit more concrete, I think more should be done when it comes to job security, thinking about social sustainability, and for especially culture and creative workers or artists. And I think one of the things that's been good here is that a representative from one part of the cultural sector that is often being perceived as a very sort of commercial side of it, the music industry, is coming here, telling us in a very open way about sort of her fear for anxiety, for not being able to actually live on what she's doing in a very fantastic way as well. I mean, she's one of the, Linnea Henriksson, one of the most sort of famous singers currently, and she's sharing that. I think that's very it's amazing in itself, but it's also really pinpointing the fact that this is not only about sort of what we usually describe as perhaps the arts. This is the music industry, and these are issues, challenges that also really are prevalent there. If we weren't sort of hiding behind a stone completely, we discovered that at least during the pandemic. But I would say, so many things to be done there, and just not only looking at the sectors, the industries, but really, the people, the organizations, the workers, thinking about long-term, short-term, etc.
So once again, stressing the job conditions as what really enables both creativity and artistic freedom that we've talked about.
And in using words like, say, social sustainability, and
yes.
Words that we really haven't been used in these contexts. Perhaps not what I've heard. No, yeah.
Jannike Ålgren.
Yes.
What would be your pitch to policymakers in the European Union?
Oh wow, where to start? Anyway, so just have to say though, even though we want to introduce ourselves, I just got a new job, Johanna. your job, actually, to be the coordinator of the IT kick. But anyway, I'm the vice president of prototyping societies at RISE, our research institute. And what I'm thinking about here, which is, well, it comes to mind, because I didn't even know the question either, just like you. And it's about, the challenges that we are facing now, going beyond the missions, because those we can actually formulate. But if we go beyond that to the complete unknown, because we have no clue, if we're in a paradigm shift, we don't know. In doing so, we need to work together. And we need to do that across different disciplines, because we cannot have a master plan. It's actually too complex. So we need to prototype, we need to experiment, we need to get started, and we need to do stuff. At RISE, we are distributed all over Sweden, which means we actually have our feet on the ground. And in all these places that we are actually acting, we have both designers as well as tech engineers, we have scientists, and along with, sometimes we drive the ecosystems and sometimes we are a proud part of ecosystems. But what we do is, of course, to try to push all the different perspectives of sustainable change that we can imagine now, and then also try just to push anyway, because it might be of relevance, but we don't know. And also reminding ourselves, with what eyes are we right now looking at these issues and these challenges? Is it with the world of knowns? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, then we need to know that that's actually how we make our decisions. Or is it actually trying to make decisions that enable us to react to whatever is coming, that we have no clue of what that might be? So I guess policy, okay, two things. One, you cannot act in silos as politicians, because that doesn't enable anything. So maybe having a day just from one department, next time let's do some crossings here. And the other one, try not to make too enclosing decisions that doesn't enable us to act on the unknown, because we need to be able to do so.
Thank you very much. Per Strömbäck.
Oh, you have a fan club. I love it. Yeah. Tack, Stefan. So I guess you're familiar with the concept of the elevator pitch, right? You meet the investor, and now, as society speeds up, I heard a new line, which is the one-floor elevator pitch. So yeah, try that. So I talked in my workshop about immaterial value creation, and if it's something that's core to the creative industries, it's immaterial value creation. And I think that's a huge opportunity for Europe, and I think we don't take that seriously. When we talk about the creative industries, from the point of view of the policymaker and everybody else, by the way, it might be clear on the creator end of the spectrum what the problems are, and also on the audience end of the spectrum. But all the stuff in between is really complex and really complicated, and I see many suggestions that try to bypass this. Mm-hmm. But that's where we should invest. We need to protect that ecosystem and give that ecosystem the best opportunities to thrive. And the way to do it is to protect the intellectual property. The intellectual property is the currency in that ecosystem. It's what makes it grow, accelerate. It's what attracts the investment. And that intellectual property must be guaranteed by the public, by the government. And don't make policy that waters down this. Don't try to strike a fair balance with consumers or whatever. Don't make exceptions. Make ambitious policy to protect the intellectual property rights. Don't buy this myth that intellectual property stands in the way of innovation. That's just a way for somebody else to take your content and monetize it. It's a lie. Protect the intellectual property, protect that ecosystem that goes beyond the creative sector. It also goes for actually a majority. A recent survey by Nima Sanandaji shows that it goes beyond the creative sector. Majority of the companies in Sweden rely on intellectual property in one way or other to exist. So it's fundamental. This is the knowledge economy. It's the immaterial economy. It's actually about creating sustainable economic development so that we can maintain our quality of life in order to, while still saving the planet, preserving, not exhausting the limited resources of this planet that we live on. We talk about electrification, services, digitalization, yes, but immaterial value creation might be the biggest promise in sustainable economic development, and that relies on intellectual property protection. Don't waste that.
Thank you very much. That's a pitch. I'm very glad we have 15 floors in this building because that's what you were given also, but that's very good. We have about 15 floors for the pitches. So, Kiran Long, you are next.
Thank you. I'll take the stairs. So my pitch is to make less policy. Get out of the way. That's the most urgent thing for us as cultural bureaucrats of different kinds to do, is to realize that every crown or euro we spend on something that is not creativity is not spent on creativity. You might think it is because it's improving procurement, or it's improving your reporting, or it's helping you get a better hotel room, or it's making your technicians get to have a coffee break. But all of those things are taking money away from the people who should have the money, and that is artists, creative people, who are going to do the work. So whatever policy we make and whatever practices we encourage and whatever ecosystems we create for people to have more artistic freedom and more agency in the societal debate, after we've made it, we need to get out of the way. I think it's a big danger that we speak in contexts like this, that we start to imagine that we are doing the work. But it is not us who does the work, of course, and we all know that. It is the extraordinary talent that we have across Europe, and especially here in Sweden. And to finish that pitch, I've had a wonderful opportunity to reconnect with my former colleague from London, Robert Mull, who's a professor here at Umeå now, who's been involved in founding an architecture school in Ukraine. And he has talked so inspiringly about how to get out of the way, how to take the money that comes just around the edges of our activities and make sure it is directed to the people who really need it, who can really make change with it, who can really make something extraordinary out of it, and that is not us.
Thank you very much. And now, last but not least, Michela Magas.
Thank you, and I actually support everything that's been said so far. So, I mean, I feel blessed because I'm already at level, 20 something. But I would like to reiterate this idea. We really need to push for this, for mass scale prototyping on the ground across the regions, where we galvanize the regional ecosystems. We assemble multidisciplinary communities, as we have done in Visions in the North and as we have done in some of these practices, and moderated by the cultural creative sector, because the methodologies come from our camp and we know how to unite people in the same place. But then have this sort of acupuncture points of project development and personal development. And then, very importantly, if we are going to set things up properly in policy, we need to work together to concatenate instruments so we can scale. Because one of the problems is you have 3 days or a week of intense development, enormous amount of fantastic ideas, and then everybody has a drink and says, didn't we do well? And they go home. And what we need is pick up those ideas and then scale them and actually concatenate all our instruments so that we can do that. Now, if as a result of that we end up with a fraction of the project's original ideas that actually scale, that's a wonderful result. If as a result of this every single person involved ups their personal development as a result of this engagement, we will have a phenomenal societal transformation.
Thank you very much. What great pitches. I have a question to two of you. Maybe you could volunteer. But is there any conflicting danger with enhancing the creative industries and moving them to the forefront of policy making and artistic freedom? It's a very broad question, but it's the question that has been lingering over the conference during these 2 days, what we've talked about artistic freedom from different angles, what limits artistic freedom. And normally we're talking about the limitations coming from the state, coming from state actors. We've also talked about legal insecurity. We've talked about the market. From your points of view, if I could get some quick comments, what would be the dangers regarding artistic freedom?
Are you sure you want to end on this note?
Yes, I do.
The danger is that as we become more successful and we prove that we can really impact the world, culture starts to be misappropriated. And it's a very, very big danger. Because, we've all heard of cultural colonialism, we've even heard of cultural dictatorship. And we need to really safeguard what culture stands for in this respect, in terms of societal transformation, in terms of what the value that it adds to society. So what we need to safeguard against is being taken over by certain forces that are driven by ulterior motives, power, money, aggression of any sort. And they are knocking on our doors because, and we all know, we have witnessed in the news, we have seen sort of these things. And so we really need to safeguard against the possibility of sort of major takeovers of these spaces that we have now. They're not by any means secure. Culture is precious, it can be fragile. And as we have seen from some of the things that you have highlighted. Also, I will continue on the copyright aspect. And I did forget to mention in my pitch that when we do engage people to prototype ideas on the ground, we need to register every idea as it gets created. We've tested this, it's possible. So that's one way to safeguard our intellectual property and our assets that we're building as cultural communities, is to actually register them and have them logged and be able to attribute the right authorship to the right person.
Karen.
Very briefly, there are two kinds of freedom. There's freedom from. Governments are really good at freedom from oppression, freedom from censorship, freedom from the compromising of intellectual property rights and so on. What they're not so good at is freedom for, the responsibility of artists to do something, the embeddedness of their practices in society all the time. And every great artwork that's ever been made is deeply embedded in its context. It's not some creation of a free person sat in a garret somewhere. It is absolutely in total dialogue with its societal needs and so on. We can't control that outcome. We have to trust that part of the outcome. We can guarantee freedom from, but we have to trust the artist when it comes to freedom for.
Tobias.
I think the danger might be that if you only look at creative industries from a short-term perspectives, there are really dangers. If you're just thinking about the revenues from last year and so forth. But if you take a long-term perspectives, I think it's really about sort of recognizing the idea that say a music composer can do one activity and that can go towards a game industry, towards sort of a symphony orchestra, a movie and so forth. So it's about sort of broadening and not sort of limiting, but not if you take a short-term perspective. So if you just sort of prefer the long-term wide scope, I think there are no real dangers.
Thank you. And thank you for all these perspectives in 20 minutes. Big applause. Thank you very much. And here to conclude the conference is Karin Svanborg Sjövall, the State Secretary to the Minister for Culture, Parisa Liljestrand. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stefan, for giving me the floor and for guiding us through this conference. I see a room full of hungry people, so I will keep this rather brief. But I would like to end by saying that I really hope that you all had fruitful days with seminars and discussions, as well as the opportunity to experience some of the rich cultural and intellectual scene that this city of Umeå really has to offer. I'm really very grateful to all of you for having come here to participate in and to contribute to this conference. Now, there are a few things that I've learned throughout the day and that I really take back with me back to Stockholm. And I think the red thread here is really the need to embrace unexpected outcomes. It's something that has been being repeated over and over again. And I think the key to be able to achieve that is to follow Kieran's advice and just get out of the way. Now, this is a difficult thing for a politician to do, but I think it's really where we need to be at. Because if we are to be able to really embrace unexpected outcomes in different ways, we also have to tackle a lot of unintended consequences in previous policy that is really conserving systems that we want to see change in. Now, with this conference, the Swedish Ministry of Culture really wanted to highlight the link between artistic freedom and cultural and creative industries. And these two topics are in and of themselves, of course, very important, not least in the light of the crises of recent years. Because we do live in troubled times, but it's also in times of trouble that we really see the true value of creativity, our ability to adapt, to find new solutions in the face of challenges is a tremendous asset and a key to the resilience of civilization. And we also know full well that these particular traits and precious abilities, creativity, agility, are very often found among entrepreneurs, as well as members of the wider cultural sector. So I was especially pleased and honored that we could welcome Mrs. Mogunets-Sisiaenko and Mr. Bakovsky from Ukraine. This conference and the presidency as a whole is, of course, deeply affected by the ongoing invasion of an EU neighboring and candidate country. I think few of us present in this room can even begin to understand what you are going through right now. But we can support you, and we can and should be inspired by your determination not only to protect your cultural heritage, but also by the visionary thinking on how to rebuild society and build better for the future. Because the creative process offers unique opportunities to probe ever more deeply into problems and conditions prevalent in all of our societies. This discussion is, of course, very much at the forefront of the thinking of the new European Bauhaus. We have to continuously highlight and ease the interaction with, for example, community planning, business empowering, culture and creativity to support a stronger climate of innovation, a broader labor market, and attractive living spaces in both urban and rural areas. But we must not forget that the creative industries also rely on culture as a dynamic and independent force based on freedom of expression. Those who dare to think differently will also be those who will come up with the new ideas. So for Europe to continue to be a leading region, it is necessary that the values of culture, measurable or not, are recognized and made visible. So this conference has now come to an end, but I know that this conversation will continue, and I really look forward to following how these themes will be raised in new and different ways by future presidencies, and of course also within the daily cooperation within the European Union. So thank you so much to all of you for coming.
Thank you, Karin. So this is it. Some practical remarks, though. It's been a pleasure guiding you through these 2 days. It's now time for lunch. We will take you the indoors way. I know most of you would like that. For those of you that would like to take the outdoors way, it's available. But guiding through the indoors path towards the lunchroom will be starting here, and then we will by the escalator, and then we will go to the lunchroom. Your luggage can remain here until 5 p.m. So you can just leave your bags here. The cultural experiences continue. Some of you have registered for Guitars, the museum. It's really an experience. It's really something you have to see. There are still some available, seats at this guided tour. So if you haven't registered for it and you would like to go, just arrive at the accreditation desk area at 2:20 and they'll accommodate you during the tour. For the rest of you, safe journeys home, and let's think about our Ukrainian friend Vladislav, who is right now on a plane to Stockholm, then a plane to Warsaw, then a bus to Lviv, and then a night train to Kyiv, and is then heading to continue his work delivering necessary equipment to the civilians at the front line. And I think we should keep that in mind when we travel home to our Friday evening activities, or if we're staying in Umeå, when we're having that glass of wine. Thank you all.